One aspect of film that usually gets overlooked or underappreciated when it comes to most people, or maybe just general audiences, is one that many don't really understand about film. You might think it's the cinematography, action, pacing, character development, but actually, it's something a lot more complex than that. It's the editing. The editing process is one of, or perhaps the most important stage when making a film or any kind of video, whether it be for music or television. Filmmakers would say that the editing process can be the making or failure of a film. Take the original Star Wars, for example. You may have heard a number of people coin the idea that Star Wars was saved in the edit, and to be honest, they're not wrong. You can clearly see a disconnect between these shots and the final cut. There's no secret that production of the film was a disaster, a word most of the cast use to describe their experience today. And when director George Lucas screened the rough cut of his film to his fellow peers, which included directors Francis Ford Coppola and Steven Spielberg, the latter being the only one who saw potential in the film. If you look at early assembles of the film, everything from the tone to the continuity seems somewhat off. It wasn't until Lucas brought in editors Richard Chew, Paul Hirsch, and his then wife Marcia Lucas. The three of them piled through a significant amount of unnecessary footage and completely re-edited a bloated first act. If you look at the final edit, it runs so much more smoothly and it has continuity, but most importantly, it feels like an actual film. There are many different techniques used in editing that are included in order to continue or what some would describe as illuminate significance to a particular scene or story within the film. Since the birth of film editing, filmmakers have been striving to develop new and unique techniques that keep cinema such an interesting and universally loved form of media. It was Russian film director Vsevolod Pudovkin who initially came up with the 5 principles of film editing. These included contrast, intercutting between two scenarios to highlight the contrast between them; parallelism, connecting two seemingly unrelated scenes and focusing on parallel features; symbolism, cutting from the main scene to something else in order to create meaning; simultaneity, this means intercutting between two different events to build suspense; and finally, leitmotif, which refers to shots or scenes being repeated to develop a sense of code. These 5 elements were critical when first theorized and gave aspiring filmmakers the opportunity to create something new and unique. Take acclaimed director Edgar Wright, for example, a director who is widely recognized for his visual style, his use of transitions, and even how he has influenced a new generation of filmmakers. Wright is one of those filmmakers who is perfect at timing, especially with the pacing of his films and the original way of getting from point A to point B. And by this I mean the way in which he has mastered the transition through the use of quick shots. For example, in Wright's unofficial 3-flavored Cornetto trilogy, as it transitions from one scene to another, particularly involving one or more character, he includes a series of very quick close-ups in order to show the process of a character moving from place to place. This technique can be seen in all 3 films and has become synonymous to Wright's style. The best example for this I can think is in the second film, Hot Fuzz, when Simon Pegg's character returns to the setting and prepares to take on the village. It's fast and unique and doesn't waste any time showing unnecessary shots of how the character is doing what he is doing, unlike other films such as Birdemic, where it literally shows the main character's entire journey from his home to his place of work. The whole purpose of transitions is so that a large amount of screen time can be used to develop characters or further the story, which is why I think Edgar Wright has perfected this technique. It isn't only transitions and quick shots Wright is known to specialise in. He is known to include unique and original techniques that have been a convention of similar films and have been used throughout the history of cinema. Much like Wright's films themselves, he manages to convey a different approach when using the same techniques that we have seen before. It's similar in the sense as Wright being described as by many as a master of his craft. He doesn't just make what's trending at a particular point in time, however he uses popular genres in order to tell his own unique story. The same could be said for his editing style. It isn't exactly what techniques he uses, but it's the way he goes about presenting those techniques in his films, using a montage, cutaways, fade, wipes, point of view shots, shot reverse shots, and of course, editing to the beat, a technique Wright excels in with the opening scene of his 2017 film, Baby Driver. Not only does this add a sense of tension, but also it emphasises the excitement and fast-paced nature of the film. This is what filmmaking is all about and why Edgar Wright has been such an influential figure in not just film editing, but the film industry. Where did it all start? It all started when the first motion cameras were invented in the late 1800s. The Lumiere brothers were revolutionary in 1895 when they invented cinematography. It was a three-way machine that recorded, captured and projected a motion picture. The work they produced only consisted of one long roll of film, a continuous shot that wasn't edited at all. Then you had filmmaker Edwin S. Porter in the early 1900s. He came along and showed everyone that it didn't have to be a long continuous shot, uninterrupted. He started to experiment by sticking different parts of film together. These films became several minutes long, consisting of several different shots. In the early years, the cuts were made within the actual camera itself. The individual behind the camera would stop filming and then continue to film at the next scene. This could also allow for some special effects early on. This technique was used in films such as Rescued by Rover in 1904 and The Great Train Robbery in 1903. The idea of placing different shots together in order to create a sequence was developed so that audiences could have a sense of realism and also so that the filmmakers themselves could create more complex and dramatic stories. What a lot of people don't realise is just how detailed and painstakingly difficult editing can really be. It wasn't always digital. Before the editing software we use now, it was known as analog editing. This involved cutting down the film negatives and placing them in order. It went through a machine called the Moviola. The Moviola was a device that allowed editors to view the film while editing. It was the first machine for motion picture editing when it was developed in 1924. During the years of analog editing, one would create a film through having a razor blade and a diagonal splicing block. After the tape was cut where it needed to be cut, it would have to be taped back together, which would be repeated over and over again until the film was created. The process of this would have taken months to create a piece of film and would have been made by a very talented and patient individual. Compare it to digital editing now, it was a time-consuming activity. And of course, digital editing refers to the editing process on a computer or some kind of digital device. It is much more faster and much more efficient. The first computers and editing software was only capable of basic sound and video editing. Computers and software of the modern day are capable of amazing effects and tasks, such as chroma keying, motion tracking, and of course CGI, which has become a huge part of film and is used in most Hollywood blockbusters today. But what is the purpose of all this? Why does editing play such a crucial role in the post-production of film? And why is it so important? It's important because it is the key to blending images and sounds to make us feel emotionally connected to the film we're watching, and sometimes truly within the world that we're experiencing. When we as audience members are watching a film, we are essentially seeing the editor's final piece of work, and it is among the most important jobs within the film industry. A film editor is looking at the picture with complete objectivity, and they should try very hard to pretend that they're the audience, see what they see, feel what they feel. Editing within film is more complex than those in, say, a music video or a television program. Editing in film has to create feeling because it's more than just the techniques or images you use. It's also about how you connect them. My name is Samuel Cooney. Thanks for watching.